Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We are in a Channel Strong week, which means that we got a bus with full of people out on the road. And this month and this week, we are in the great state of Texas. So, good news is Texas is a fun place with lots of highway, which means lots of opportunity to get into trouble. All of that being said, if you want to learn more about the Channel Strong Tour, let's just do some quick housekeeping as I normally do. You'd want to spend a little bit of time either at mspinitiative.com, or if you frequent LinkedIn or Facebook, we have pages there as well. But you'll see on our website, this session and every other session will be in podcast or video format under the Sessions tab. Keep track of our community block parties. Next one's not coming for a little while now, but we usually do those around larger events in the channel. And then what we're talking about today is the Channel Strong Tour. Again, we're in Texas, but you'll notice the whole year is posted, and you can see where we're going and when. And if you're an MSP, just jump on, put in a form, and we will make sure you get an invite. So that is, interestingly enough, where we're headed to today. We have MSPs let us borrow their parking lots. They host us. And today we have Nathan from RX over in San Antonio area hosting us for the Channel Strong Tour. How you doing today, Nathan?
I'm great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, appreciate you lending us some, hopefully some sunshine. We had some interesting weather yesterday in Houston, but hopefully some sunshine. Looks good behind you right there. Yeah. And a good parking lot space, and hopefully some good company.
Yep, that's the idea. Looking forward to it. I think we did it a year or two ago, and it was great. I mean, it's just, get to see quote unquote competitors. I don't know how it works in other states, but here in Texas, we got a lot of good people in the industry. So it's always nice to see other owners and just have a moment to grab a bite, have a drink, meet some vendors. It's nice.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the whole premise to what we're doing on the road. And thanks for that, by the way, because people think, hey, like, what is this? I mean, it's really just, almost like you're having a hallway conversation, but with the sandwich in one hand and a beer in the other. So it kind of keeps it casual. And by the way, Keith, I'm not sporting any Dallas gear. Just happens to be a bluish golf shirt I have on there, buddy. But I'm sure you have some Dallas gear always, Keith over there, who's actually not from Texas, right? He lives in LA area, but that's okay. We'll give him or Orange County area. I'm sorry, Keith, if I misspoke. But actually, you know what? I'm gonna allow him to talk because I know he's just gonna jam. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if you heard, my car died yesterday. And Mercedes.
I was just in the middle of like reading the Facebook post about how Mercedes is supposed to be the creme de la creme, top of the line, and then I didn't get to the rest of the post. What happened to you?
It was horrible. I mean, I pushed my emergency SOS button before 5 o'clock.
Uh-oh.
And they put you on hold for 35 minutes.
Well, they know you're a Dallas fan, so that's why you get pushed to the bottom of the list.
And you pay extra for that ME concierge service. Mm-hmm. And then every time you call in, I think this is up your alley because your voice, do not design a call tree that deliberately tells your customers no one here wants to talk to you, so please call back during business hours.
That would defeat the purpose of calling in, no?
Yeah. And so one of the guys suggested, hey, my laptop with all the gate codes for tomorrow morning's dispatch is locked in the trunk. My top is down. The car won't lock. And he goes, you mind calling back tomorrow? And I said, what? I said, I misunderstood your advertisement about 24-hour support. I thought it was 24 hours a day. It's actually a random 24 hours during the year, and I just didn't call in the right time.
or maybe it was 24 hours per week, and like that's changing how many hours are available, right?
And I don't buy the low end one, and we buy a couple every couple of years. So I just called the dealer and I said, hey, when I pick up my car, can you give me a drive just to lift across the street so I can look at BMWs? I go, the 8 Series convertible is not a bad car.
I'm sure that fired it up.
Yeah, it's like, and just not to have people that, I mean, it's like you call and you go like, no one really seemed to give a crap.
Well, I see Darren's about to say something. Go
You'd
ahead.
you'd be much better with BMW. Get away from the Mercedes trash. Seriously, I don't know what you're doing.
Neither do I anymore. No, they used to, I'm not a big car guy. I just drive a car, and I want support. So that's what I pay for. I said, I'll pay. I told the dealer, I said, I just want you to service me. I'm not even going to have you on price. Just when I call in, have a loaner car, have it ready. I don't want any grief.
Keith, you strike me as the kind of person that would take a driverless car right now. I think you should talk to the Waymo or one of those and say, listen, I want to make a deal and I want one of your driverless cars just for my own use. That's how I think that would make you happy.
That's this funny story. I was driving my son up to Napa, and this is after I've had my car for like a year and a half or so. And he goes, your car drives itself, Dad. And I knew it had that, where you put it so far behind us, and you just set to say go to 100, even though you're not going 100, and it keeps with the flow of traffic and so many car limits. And he goes, no, you push this other button here, and it steers and everything. It'll do all your lane changes. And he doesn't drive, my other son. It's my special needs son. I said, really? It's the first time I knew it. I go, God, I didn't even know. I just saw the button on the steering wheel and ignored it. And so it is kind of driverless.
You would have thought that they would have went over that feature with you when you bought the car.
Yeah, I have an attention span of a gnat. And so the other thing in California, I don't know about other states, they have to have a warning on it that if your hands are off the steering wheel, the dash starts flashing. And if you do it too many times, it says, do you need a brake, or it disables driverless. So when I went back in, I said, oh, it has this. He goes, I said, but this little light flashes. He says, that's because you're taking your hand off the wheel. So that GM commercial where the guy's clapping and doing all the, in the front of the truck, can't do it in California. I don't know about other states, but in California, you have to have your hands on the wheel.
That's not a California thing, actually. And anyway, that will change. It's just how the systems are designed. But anyway.
Yeah, I remember, and Darren's smarter than I am, definitely. There was a thing about the taxis, and I thought it was Philadelphia or somewhere in there, and they were going to test them in Philadelphia, the driverless taxis, and the local.
It's Pittsburgh.
Was it Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh was doing it was like Carnegie Mellon, and one of the major car manufacturers was doing was building the pilots out of Pittsburgh and they were doing like a joint partnership to do the testing.
And at the end of the day, that they ruled, oh, you can make it driverless, but you have to have a driver in the car. I remember it was like a weird rules.
Yeah, that's all. Phoenix has been doing it for a while. There's some other cities. I forgot which one I just heard. San Francisco just got added this week, where it's legal for them to be offering these with no driver, and that's it. So we're in that age right now, and in a few cities, and soon to be more.
I remember thinking that was funny when it came out. The whole purpose was cut labor, and the end of the day it was, but you still have to pay the driver. Now you pay the guy not to drive. Yeah. So we're going to do that in the MSP. You're going to hire a help desk not to answer the phone. Is that going to be the new thing?
Well, that's interesting. I'm going to bring up a topic. I'm going to throw it to Nathan first. Nathan, no, not even. Don't say that I'm biased here. Just take that out of the equation. I was reading these MSPs in this forum, and they were like, yeah, like we don't allow our customers to call us. Like it has to be ticketing or electronic based submission, and then if we want to call them, we will call them. We'll do an outbound call to them, but they're not allowed to call inbound for any sort of technical services. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's the way. And I think to myself, how many times when I have a problem and I really need to solve it, I don't want to do something on chat. I need to talk to somebody. I need to actually get to a human being. What do you think about that, Nathan?
I'd like to know what markets those MSPs operate in, because it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity. Yeah, we answer every call live.
Right?
If you want to talk about the weather, give us a call. Now it is operationally much more efficient and simpler to handle electronic tickets, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, if you've got a site down, if you've got, an employee that you're concerned that you want to terminate, I mean, I can think of a dozen reasons off the top of my head that a phone call is warranted. So I'm, and I choose vendors in the same way, right? I mean, I'm not going to mention any names because of private equity and changes, but 5-10 years ago, I would pay 10, 15, 20% more for a vendor who answered the phone and within one or two people could solve my problem, right? I don't want to call in, get transferred 4 times, have to repeat my address and account number, right? That kind of stuff. Who's got time for that? So I'm firm on the answer the phone live. And, again, we prefer email submission and those things because they're simpler to organize, but we fundamentally in the IT business, we're in the service business. We just happen to deal with computers. Right?
All right. So let me ask you a quick follow-up question.
Sure.
So like you probably have 2 or 3 or 4 different channels for people to flag you for support related things. Like of the 100% of the way people contact your company, how much is, let's just put electronic versus phone?
I'd say 25% phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Just as a
By the way, I'm sitting here not on camera giving Nathan huge thumbs up, going like, he's my man. I'm serious. I agree with George. I read these. That's why I wrote a blog one time, said I'm not an MSP, which offended a lot of people.
You're kind of not an MSP, but that's fine.
I read these things where it's fire customers, and I'm going like, put away the blue light, look to become Nordstrom's and charge enough so that customers can use the vehicles that make them comfortable. And when you're worried about, oh, I could save $1.50 here, and and you hear them, especially at events where they're going, let's find a vendor to host a bar. You're going, make enough money to buy your own drinks.
Well, but Keith, let me rewind for a second. Let's like, I get the value of, your techs don't want to work 24 hours a day. Maybe you can't, man a multiple shift day, right? Maybe like you have one set of guys, you're not big enough to do day shift, night shift, or overlap. Okay. So you use an answering service. Okay. And a lot of people still do that. It's, believe it or not, it's very popular. It's still happening a lot. So like after, let's be reasonable, 6 o'clock, whatever time zone you're in, you send calls to the answering service. And then like the answering service has some sort of list of people to triage, depending on the nature of whatever it is. So like, now these people, same thread, they're like, oh, well, we just leave the answering service on 24 hours a day.
I'll give you a couple answers. Number one, and people have different business models. There's certain clients I have that if they call, they can call me.
Sure.
And I just charge for it. You were there one day. I mean, and it's not cheap. It's
well, I'm sure you're charging $1,000 a call, but
No, it's a base rate just to have the cell phone number.
Okay.
And that's not boasting. I'm telling people that's a value proposition. That's being honest with your client. You're saying, but when you have that relationship that it sounds like Nathan builds, I mean, I'm really impressed with this guy so far. You sit down with a customer and you say, hey, at 7 o'clock at night, when you want to call me just because you're hiring new people next week and you want me to look for some laptops or whatever the thing is, can you send me an email or ticket, because that's when I'm kind of having dinner, and you're more human with them and they understand. So when they do call you, there's this mutual respect, and I don't think MSPs that are talking about firing customers, my customer's stupid. I'm a big self-talk guy. Tony Robinson, it's like, if you're walking around your office saying customers are stupid, I think eventually that gets in your attitude and how you support them. And so, when you have a partnership, a relationship, a mutual respect, it's like, what's your QBR? 25 minutes of seeing how his family's doing and his kids are, and that kind of stuff, versus here we answered 100 tickets for you. Who gives a crap? And so they respect your time, you respect their time.
I feel like there's a hidden voice here. So let me throw another block in here. Okay. So you have your customer, right? They're paying you for, some sort of level of service. I don't even want to talk about formal, SLAs and stuff like that. Just like, hey, I'm paying for peace of mind. I'm paying for a higher tier of service. I want the Chick-fil-A service, not the Burger King service. Okay. That relates to a lot of people, right? Especially Darren. He knows what I'm talking about. So you have your customer, right? You have the actual leader of the company, owner of the company, principal of the company, put whatever name fits, okay? But then behind you are staff. They're technical people, right?
Mhm.
And like what these people say here completely counter what these people want, okay? The end customers want. And you're in the middle, right? And so like I feel like, again, I'm not trying to knock anyone's business model, but 24 hours a day answering service, we'll respond back to your calls when we're ready. And listen, is it that much different than a dispatcher? I think so. Like if you actually have a dispatcher saying, hey, I see the schedule, I see who's on the phone with who, like this person's going to get back to you, you're the next person up. That's a different response than, hey, I'm an outside entity, I'm just going to take your message and we'll send it across and eventually somebody will get back to you. Or, hey, we just don't take calls, there's not even a number, don't call us. Like, I guess it all depends on variables, right? Who are you dealing with and are they okay with that? But to your point, Keith, like these people always talk about the employees, right, behind the owner of the company. They always talk about work-life balance. They always talk about not wanting to do rotated shifts after hours, not needing to do nights and weekends because there's projects that are affecting business, the business during their regular operation. So how do you deal with this part, the staff, the employees, the workforce part, and their view countering what the end user's expectations are? How do you fix that problem? Because to me, it's not don't answer phones. I think that's a mistake.
So
Communication and staff. I'd start with that. We have Teams because it's kind of cool, and we have a calendar that just, and you put on that calendar, like with the port, which is pretty high pro. Just last night, one of my techs put on, I'm going to be at my daughter's swim meet from 4 till 6. Another guy said I have a softball game. So I just called the dispatcher on site and said, hey, you're stuck with me tonight. If anything happens, let me know, call me. And by the way,
and I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to give Nathan a chance to respond here. I would think, obviously, every company size is different. But if you're in a situation where you're the owner or the principal of the company and you need to do that, I would say 9 times out of 10, that will happen, right? Like, the customer's ultimately going to get service or not. And if your people aren't going to be able to do it, somebody has to. You're the last man standing, right? Or woman or whatever. Nathan, what's your thought on this?
So I was the on-call for 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, so we've got some municipal business and we've got some emergency services, ambulatory companies, stuff like that. And the 24/7 is it's a non-negotiable for us. I mean, our first MSP client was a city. So it became a requirement for us out of the gate. When we were much smaller, 3-4 techs, I didn't feel like I wanted to put that added burden on them at the time. So I took the on-call. I felt like it was the right thing to do for that work-life balance. They weren't taking the risk. They weren't, so I wasn't going to ask them to make the sacrifice I was. We got about 12, 15. I realized I was probably working myself to death at that point. But on call, you really just, if you have the right conversations with clients, 7 o'clock to talk to me about employees starting next week, that's an email, dude. Like, come on, right? I'm in the middle of, whatever the case may be. But then what we did when we did eventually transition to a true on call, is we just compensated. It's 2 weeks on, and then I think you get like 2.5 months off. I think we got 6 slots or something like that. So it's only a 2-week on call. And then one of the things we're going to be implementing later this year is that last Friday you're on call, you get the afternoon off. All right. So there's a monetary compensation for on call. You get that Friday afternoon off, and then it's just a requirement. It's something that we have to do. we're very, again, we are a service company in the IT business, right? We'd be a service company in the lawn care business or a barbershop, whatever the case may be. And we just make that very clear to the folks that are starting that that's one of our core values.
Okay, hold on. Let's rewind.
Okay.
During the hiring process, right? You're going out there trying to find people, which for years they've said it's hard. I argue it's harder now than ever, especially if you're trying to hire in market, right? Like if it's remote, it's a little bit easier, right? Because you have a lot of people to pull from. But hey, if you need somebody to be geographically close to you, right? So they can walk in the door somewhere, small pool, right? So when you bring this question up, when you bring this requirement up, do you get pushback? Because like I'm hearing a lot of people like, I don't want to use the, what, I don't know if it's whether it's a millennial thing, whatever. I don't care what generation you're from. It just seems like the younger people, they want to shut it off, man. Shut work off.
You're in the wrong business, right? I mean, it's if I hear that, then they don't truly understand what IT is. I mean, we don't, a server goes offline at 5:15. I will deal with it in the morning. It's just not an acceptable answer. If phones aren't ringing, if emails not flowing, that's just not acceptable. I mean, we live in a, right? If my business wasn't, if I wasn't able to access my documents at 8, 9 o'clock at night, there have been weeks and months where I'm here, more often than I should be. So it's just not an acceptable answer. You're in the wrong business. If you want something comfortable and 8 to 5, there's thousands of other industries you can do that. The other side of my business, right? We also are a low voltage integrator. So I've got about 30% of my revenue, cabling guys and security camera, stuff like that. They're pretty standard on an 8 to 5. When you're working at a construction site, it shuts down. In IT, that's just not an option, right? I mean, we've got businesses open. The services need to run. And if you're not addressing it at night and waiting until that morning, you are begging for a blue screen of death or a RAID array failure or right.
So on top of that,
all right.
And I don't know how other people run their company, but I don't even know where my techs are right now. I mean, it's like they may be playing golf. I'm okay with that. As long as they respond when someone needs them. So, I used to tell customers when I would explain this, by the way, I always want, when we're done, I'd like to get Nathan's opinion on whether you offer varied. So I do everyone on 7x24 because I'm not smart enough to figure out the billing. Plus I surely don't want to tech at 5:15 to piss off a customer. You're 15 minutes late, call back tomorrow. But anyway, on the other part, you're going like, we have a lot of free time in our business, at least I see it, to where, they can go to their kid's softball game or so on, because basically if nothing's going on, I don't want you chained to a desk. We've been remote. George and I have talked about this since before COVID. We have an office, but I don't even know what it's for. Hardly anyone's there, and you go in there once in a while to work on the server together or something, but you can't plan your emergencies.
It's interesting you say that, Keith, because that was literally the next thought in my mind. I had a guy who was way against, tech guy was way against on call. He's like, I can't go anywhere. I'm chained. And I'm like, but are you? I mean, isn't all of the tools, all of the systems, all of the apps, all of the connectivity, and you could literally be anywhere and be able to pretty much fix most things. Like I've taken calls in the middle of an Eagles game in the stadium, God forbid, Keith. But I've been in many places that were not in front of a computer, and if something was in trouble, I literally could just get where I need to get with my iPhone, right? I mean, Nathan, do you agree with that? I don't know. I feel like
I'm just surprised. I'm surprised that there was electricity in that stadium, but we'll just drop it there.
Wow. And by the way, solar and all sorts of other stuff, but we'll take that for another time. Nathan, I mean, do you agree with the tech mentality that, oh no, they got to be in front of a desk while they're on call and they can't go anywhere?
I hope not. I mean, those 7 years, I sure as heck wasn't sitting at home. Took calls from the beach, took calls. I mean, I'd still, on occasion go out and have a beer or two, right? If so long as you've got mental capacity and you're right. No, take your laptop, take your cell phone. And again, if you think you have to sit at a desk, you're probably in the wrong profession.
I agree. And so that's it would be interesting to take the reality of what we just said and go back to the keyboard forum, warrior forums, I call them, and say, wait a minute, guys, something's wrong. Why is the perception this way? All right, well, let's flip to the other side. Recent news. So good, bad, or indifferent. I don't care whether you're on the left, right, or the middle. The administration came out this week and said, hey, you better, pay attention to your cybersecurity stuff because bad things are about to happen, as if they know what's coming down the pipe from, I don't know if it's from the, whatever's happening in Russia and Ukraine, whatever, but like, it seems like cybersecurity or cyber, criminals or, cyber war, I don't know what the right word is now, they're saying that's now just as good a playing field or battlefield as the bombs and the missiles and the grenades. That's scary, man. You guys hearing this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
George, and I've got some strong opinions about that.
No, let's
First,
hear it. I don't know what to take from it, because in the past, like obviously as an industry, we heard about SolarWinds, we heard about Kaseya, we heard about Keystone Pipeline, stuff like that, right? But not many, like the government maybe fine. I think they said they extradited somebody on the Kaseya thing.
Yep.
We'll see how it all pans out. But I just don't feel like whatever's in place at the government level from whatever this cybersecurity force is, I just don't know. I mean, maybe it's invisible to me, but I don't feel like we're covered. And when they come out and they say, hey, it's got to get worse and you better, make sure your windows and your locks are sorted, I get even more worried.
First, that does remind me I should go make sure that we've got our cybersecurity. So I got to jump, thanks for reminding me, Mr. President. But no, I in this, I'm going to make sure nobody's standing with a brick anywhere near me. But I think Colonial was probably the best thing that's happened to our industry in a very long time. It was the first time I heard a White House press secretary say ransomware.
Yeah.
It became a part, DC was finally paying attention to what we've been dealing with for a decade. Right. I mean, it's no longer little Trojans that throw up, naughty pictures on your computer. I mean, this is real data and real extraction of data on the new flavors of ransomware. And the fact that DC is actually paying attention to these things and starting to put out these warnings. I mean, last summer after Colonial, we had more security audits than we'd done in the past decade. I mean, we got calls from, and I personally am fairly apolitical, right? I'm an American as my political party.
So you're a Cowboys fan?
I am. I'm from America. Yeah, so that does.
Okay.
I'm from America, so obviously I'm a fan of America's team.
I knew that was coming. I knew
we could spend hours on George, but go ahead.
So, yeah, and we had some of those customers that we'd been preaching to for a few years. Hey, we need to take this stuff seriously, MFA and the basic blocking and tackling. Right. Well, it's an inconvenience. And I said, well, do you lock your door when you leave your house? Right. It'd be easier to just walk in. But I saw a lot of those folks. Right. And I play a game with when I'm in groups of strangers is, have you heard of ransomware? Right. And 10 years ago, they look at me like I'm crazy. 5 years ago, maybe one or two a year. Now it's, 10, 20% of folks. Yeah, I've heard of it. Don't really understand it, but at least it's present. Right. At least they have an understanding of what's going on. So I'm reasonably happy that DC is finally starting to understand what we've been dealing with for a decade. And I'm happy that they're talking about it. Now, whether, anything's going to get better, that's a different story, but just the conversation, right? I mean, you kill mold with light. So let's at least shine some light on it.
You bring up, you can go on a whole other topic, which is, what can the government do without overstepping into our industry? And I know that's too long to get in today, but I've been working on that with some legislative committees, and I said, you're going to get lawyers, insurance companies, and politicians talking about something they really don't understand. And
but hold on, Keith. Rewind. When there's a gas leak, all right, the gas company is ultimately responsible to maintain and fix the infrastructure that they're delivering their service.
They're
but
regulated.
The city and the municipality or whatever, depending on where you live, right, the size, like they're the ones that are going to go and shut that pipe off because they know it could be a danger to the surrounding area. I got to think, maybe I'm foolish, but I have to believe that if the CISA and all the cybersecurity, Department of Defense, all these people, they're not monitoring the traffic that are hitting our wires in this country and can maybe stop something midway?
Do you want them to?
I don't know. I mean, if it's going to be cataclysmic, maybe I do.
By the way, I do think they are, but I don't think they want to admit that to the degree they are. But then we start talking about degrees of foil hats. And you're every time you give up, I guess I'm a libertarian, if I were to say anything. You know, when someone asks me to sign a petition to support gay marriage, I said, I'm opposed to the government being involved in marriage.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
So that's kind of so on this, I'm kind of going like, I just think we open a can of worms and you start dealing with people whose mentality, because they're lawyers, in order to be, you go to a college, you get a 4-year degree, you get a license, you're regulated, you pay a fee, and that would put out of business many MSPs who do a very good job in what they're doing, but formally are not an IT provider by the legislative definition that's out there. And I think that would adversely hurt small business, because the people being left would be the big players who are going like, I'm not really interested in your 5-person insurance office. I'm doing the 200-seat medical center down the street.
Well, hold on, you're getting deep, and maybe I know why, but like, if the government knows that a foreign country is starting to attack banks in the United States electronically, don't you think if they know something bad's coming, they should maybe help with that?
So let's, I mean, George, we could talk about Eternal Blue and WannaCry.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, that's, you know, if we're gonna, and I am again not gonna comment publicly, rarely privately on politics. I vote, and that's, you know, and then I try and find sensible candidates who I think have an understanding of what I care about and support them in any way I can. But yeah, I mean, we lost Eternal Blue, and it was 6 months before they let us know, right? So it's tough to say what they should, what they are, what they wouldn't, what they won't, when you're not in those rooms.
No, I agree with that.
I got a lot of people.
I just wish it was more visible, Nathan, right? Like, I don't feel the protection that they apparently do at everywhere else, right?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I like the theory, but I'm not as careful politically as Nathan. Having dealt in government contracts, I don't meet a lot of people in the government that I would have program my iPhone, and they're in high positions. So I can't think of many government programs that I would call awfully successful.
Okay, so they try. I don't know if it's passed. I think maybe it did, maybe it didn't. They were in the middle.
Keith, hold on. Keith, you're talking about something different, which is the regulation and the policy making, which is a different thing. What George is saying, and I agree, that just as they stop, you know, signs of a clear terrorist attack, you read about, you know, this was thwarted, this was stopped, and they don't give you many details, but they do all that stuff. So they say, I mean, it should be, I think, the same with the cyber situation, since it's now being discussed as on the same playing field as actual shooting war. And if they have the ability to mitigate some of this stuff, I think they should, and they should say that they're doing it. I mean,
I'm not opposed. Like I said, on the original premise, if I had more faith and trust in the people behind the switch, I would not be opposed to that. My fear, and you're right, I'm going down the longer path because I think it opens that door. That's my fear. I'm going like, there's a door I don't want open. And I don't know at what point I trust them to say, okay, you can only come in my entryway, but you can't come in my bedroom, in my, you know, so that's where I'm at. I go, in theory, if there was more of an industry controlled or some kind of oversight where we said it's a major attack, we're shutting down, it was coordinated, I'm in it. I'm just afraid of who's going to get the switch.
So that's absolutely what I was saying. And then on the flip side, and this kind of goes back towards what you're trying to say, Keith, is that, you know, Matt Lee and I were talking a few weeks about, hey, they reintroduced this Senate, in the Senate, this, hey, if you paid out ransomware, you had been attacked, you have a certain period of time to report this. And I'm not sure if that's been passed. I should go back and look. But if that was passed, that's like after the fact, right? Like damage is done, accident occurred, and now I'm just waiting to report to effectively the insurance company at this point, right? So I feel like, proactive, we're all told be proactive, right? Don't leave the front door open. Make sure you have your blocking and tackling done. And I just on this front, right? And to Nathan's point, maybe all the big players are now doing the work for us from a marketing standpoint, right? Hey, the bad guys are coming. Oh, by the way, we're probably not going to be able to help you, but when it does, let us know, and we'll put that into a book. That's not a good. To me, that's a horrible message.
I think it's a much larger conversation than we can accomplish in an hour. And I agree with Keith. There's definitely clients ask me, like, can you make me perfectly secure? And I say, absolutely. Unplug the internet. Yeah. Work on pen and paper. Nobody will ever, you will not suffer a cyber attack if you work on pen and paper. I can guarantee it. Outside of that, there's a question of usability. And then you take that usability versus security and spread that out. Do we blacklist, you put a giant firewall around America and then require us to VPN if we've got business in other countries? I mean, where is that slider bar end? And far be it for me, and I've read some really neat books. I think The Cuckoo's Egg, if anybody's ever read, it's fantastic. It's like the first, and I may be misspeaking, but the first cyber attack in the 80s at Berkeley. Yeah, it's fantastic. This physicist who, and this was back when, if you're a physicist who's like ever seen a keyboard, you're the IT physicist, right? You become the IT guy. I think that's how a lot of us got in this industry. But just, what's reasonable to ask of the government? What's reasonable to ask of us, right? And where does that interplay of cooperation between the two happen? I tend to agree with Keith. I've met a lot of folks. I've been lucky over the last few years to meet a lot of folks who are involved at very high levels of government, and they're very, very sharp. Unfortunately, it's just not a lot of them who are on the ballot in November, and I think that may be part of the issue is looking at folks who have an understanding of what we're going through in the IT space. And that may be some hubris, right? Saying that IT needs to be represented in a significant way. But, when the president's warning us about cyber attacks, maybe it's not, maybe it is legitimate. Maybe we need to have some folks up there on these committees, on these panels who actually have a background, right? Rather than asking their grandson to program their iPhone, as Keith said.
I feel much better, and I could be completely wrong on this because I'm not deep involved in all the organizations. We have all these groups that purportedly represent us as providers. And I'm going, if we had one or a united front or strength between all of them, and we said we were involved in that legislation and we were oversight of that turn off the internet department that George just created, I'd feel more comfortable. Now, if it's like they look who they promote to head departments. And I'm not, a well-known heart surgeon, an intelligent guy to oversee housing and urban development. Doesn't he belong in healthcare? And I could pull that all over the government. I mean, you look all over, and I go, that's my concern. And then to your original point, George, about it makes an interesting. You talked about other countries be able to wage war through cyber. You go, that puts a new dynamic on defining power. You're empowering less wealthy countries. It's an interesting dynamic to go down one day. That would be a whole discussion.
It's not a high bar, unfortunately, and it seems to be becoming the popular thing to get into it from the outside perspective. All things being said, current events, right? Obviously the government, hey, these cyber attacks are coming. That was a few days ago. Today, it's moving into another arena. It hit the internet, Okta, which is a popular, especially in enterprise, a popular single sign-on, kind of identity company. Would be similar to like Duo or even Azure single sign-on, stuff like that. Apparently they may have had a breach back in January.
Oh, that's breaking news, George.
And that was big into government, and especially when they were starting to issue iPhones and iPads. I mean, at least in California, that was the California standard.
Okta, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, like, we rely on the blocking and tackling to try and make it harder, right, to pick the lock. But, what was it? The company that manages most SMS delivery for most of the carriers in the US, they had they came out and said that they had a breach. And, that's when we said, hey, OTP, right? Don't go SMS for your MFA. You want to do, the app-based MFA. Now we're finding, hey, those guys may have a problem too. So if it's Okta today, is it Google Authenticator tomorrow?
Well, I'm reading an article as we speak on this, George, and it sounds like before they spoke about Okta, they published their claim to have extensive source code on Bing Maps, and Cortana. So if they've got source code from, and it happened to Apple last year as well, right?
Yeah.
With the MacBooks. So that's the conversation we're having with, and we range from the enterprise to, I've got 2 user accounts. And it's, look, you guys you don't have the resources of Microsoft. This is a best effort activity. If we are specifically targeted with social engineering and the whole works, there's a chance we're going to be in trouble. So we need to have a few gates that they've got to pass through. It's scary stuff. And that's the conversation, right? It's the kid that they got for Kaseya was 22.
Really?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
22. I'm explaining to clients, when you think of hackers, it's not the teenager down the street in his mom's basement, right? Think of a call center is what we're dealing with. These are professionals. They're recruiting, right? They've got fake companies in Eastern Europe. They're putting up fake companies to, be a software developer and be a this and be a this. And they've come to find it's actually a part of a ransomware group that they're just struggling to recruit talent, if you will.
Do you think that those guys are on call, the ransomware recruiter guys?
I think they, based on when the timing of ransomwares that I've seen, I don't think they sleep. It's weekends, and I think they're waiting for us to be asleep so they can do a little bit more damage.
Nathan, if you read, I'm sure you read some of this, the Conti leaks that are all over, and they keep, different people keep going through that information, and it really is crazy to read some of that stuff. It's
168,000 text messages. George, have you heard of the Conti leaks?
I am a little bit familiar. I have probably not read as much as Darren, but
so
they have, there's a guide, a blueprint to hacking, and they talk about their tool sets and how they get commercial penetration tools that are not supposed to be available, but it's really crazy. It's all over the place, but there's a lot of it out there. It's very insightful.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is cyclical, in my opinion. It's good guys versus bad guys, and the good guys invent a wall and the bad guys invent the trebuchet, right? And right now the bad guys have a bit of an advantage because of new tool sets. But I'm pretty confident in the industry and the folks that I've talked to and the vendors that are coming, right? We're all having conversations at the water cooler talks that we're going to have this afternoon is going to be based around new strategies and what's working, what's not. And I think that's the big benefit of getting together with other industry folks and vendors and having these real conversations about what are you seeing, what strategies are working. And I think within the next 2-3 years, the good guys will catch up and hopefully get a little bit. And then the bad guys will invent, muskets and stuff like that. And it's just good guys versus bad guys is a tale as old as time. So I'm convinced it's cyclical.
The interesting discussions always come down into a lot of these groups is whose job is it? You ever hear, it's like, oh, the MSP says my vendor let me down. You're going, well, you're the one selling the service, and should you know what did you vet the right vendor? And I think that's something in our industry eventually is going to have to be defined in some ways.
Yep.
Is what are the standards? Whose because a guy who's a 3-4 person MSP, how much vetting can he do? And does he even have that skill set? And so you're going, when an industry committee, an ASCII or a CompTIA, one of them endorses a vendor, you're going, what does that mean? And I think those are interesting questions. Does that mean they have someone wrote checks back and forth and they're going to be a sponsor of events? Or is this a quality vendor that's secure in delivering the right kind of service?
And for how long, until they get rolled up or something happens, it's
Matt Lee made a comment a long while ago, maybe not too long ago, back.
And he's smart because he has a good beard. I'm just
apparently he's going to be shaving his beard for charity at the end of the year. So
we talked about that. He asked me if I'm in. I said no.
But he did say he's like he's like, we were talking about SOC as a service vendors, and he's like, the vendor you're using now, 6 months from now, you may be using a different one.
Yep. And
I was like, wow, that's a pretty quick shift, especially when everybody wants like a contract. He's like, just telling you, he's like, things move way fast. He's
and
like,
that's tough at the front end, as Nathan and that's tough for us to adjust a contract, roll it out, change everything. One of the things we do, and I'm sure Nathan does because he sounds like a super professional, is you're rolling things into the workflow. So you're not a obtrusive part of, like, I'm the guy that owns a network, I'm security. You're rolling this into a workflow so that 2FA and spam filtering and phishing training is all part of their daily workflow. So making those changes would be very labor intensive if you're deploying them correctly. And that's concerning. I've heard Matt say that before, and I go, that concerns me a lot.
Could you imagine rotating? Like, at this point, the security conversation has turned into its own bag of 4, 5, 8, 10 things, right? Like, you can't just say, oh, I got my 2, 3 things, we're good. Like, we're past that time now, right? Okay. So like, imagine if you're constantly changing those pieces. I mean, I guess if it's not customer facing as much, but then to Keith's point, they kind of need to be part of the puzzle, right?
Yeah, for me, they're, we don't even advertise, I think, a chunk of the security vendors. It's just a part of the package. You're getting our antivirus, you're getting 2FA, you're getting. And then if we decide to make a change, we're not having that conversation with customers, right? We're just changing the vendor on the back end. But to Keith's point, it does make me a little more vulnerable. Fortunately, just by luck, I was not one of the Kaseya partners at the time, but it wasn't because I, vetted Kaseya or took time to look at, ConnectWise's private equity, didn't sit in any board meetings. It was just because they had the best price at the time, right? I mean, let's call it what it is. So, it's definitely a challenge, and especially with how hot M&A and private equity is in the industry right now, it's hard to know where folks are going to end up. And, is that company going to truly be controlled by usually the founder with a security mindset, or is it going to be the bean counter at the private equity firm who says, maybe we don't need that lock for $5,000 a year.
All right, Darren. Enter Darren, who says, I don't want all of my eggs in
Nathan, I like Nathan quite a bit here. This is a guy that knows what he's talking about. I can say that. So
thanks, Darren.
Because that's the biggest thing that I think the biggest issue that we have vendor wise is you vet a vendor, you work with them, you develop that relationship and are comfortable with their offering. And then, overnight, seemingly, that all can change very quickly. And we've seen it, and it seems like we're going to continue to see it. And it's, it means we have to always have our next option kind of ready to go, because that's exactly what happens, Nathan, is, private equity cares about one thing precisely only. And that's, we all know that. So
they're very good at it. Yes.
Yep. It's purely not the function, it's the bottom line always.
They're
so
very, very good.
It's a very sad state of affairs in this industry, particularly with all the attention that it now has, of course, because of what's going on. And I mean, I think that's going to leave us most vulnerable to, things that we thought were working or were done or were handled or considered, all of a sudden are not, and we won't know about it until it's too late.
I'd reply to that, Darren. It's it feels, anybody who's been in this space for, more than 5-10 years, it feels like a lifetime, but it's still a relatively new industry, right? And the challenge that we face 5-10 years ago were different challenges. So I think, so long as we continue to have conversations like this, right? I don't have enough power to make change, but if we do, right? If we keep having conversations like this, the industry will mature. We'll get the folks up in DC to start paying attention and play a part in that conversation with us. And I'm very confident that over the course of the next few years, some of these things will get figured out. But again, we got to talk about them. I mean, they've got to be present in these water cooler talks. If I wasn't talking with my competitors or inside or outside of San Antonio, I'd be blind, right? We've got to continue as an industry to kind of reach across the aisle, because I'm very clear when I talk to other folks, this is not me versus you, this is us versus them, right? It should be our service level versus your service level, not who's going to be threatened by cybersecurity the most over the next year, right? If we can eliminate, you know what I mean? So it's every dollar that George pays towards the bad guys is a dollar I got to fight. I mean, this is
might be 2, might be 3. I think what you guys are saying really drives to the concept that, hey, it's if these nation states, if it is Russia who's on the clock right now, who's using all this as a means,
right?
Okay, yeah. It's kind of it's terrorism, right? It's war, right?
It is, yeah.
And
absolutely.
so, like, when bad things happen, it's a shame that sometimes it takes that type of stuff. Like, imagine going back to 9/11, right? Like, the people in that area bonded together in a way they probably haven't done in a long time. It's sorry to say that, but it just happens granularly that way. And then as a community, everybody rises up to help, to fight the bigger battle as a group. And it's kind of what it is now, right? And unfortunately, there is a little bit of a stigma with, hey, Okta today, another guy tomorrow, Kaseya yesterday, another company tomorrow, right? Like, everybody has to be doing their part, but it is one big bubble now.
George, and I would, I'd put a little bit more severity on the words that you used. It is war. I mean, WannaCry, when it took down the National Health System of England, people died. I mean, there's, for me, no other way to look at that, right? It is, people died when you start messing with healthcare, banking services, critical infrastructure, right? If we're talking about power, transportation, and power being in Texas is something that's top of mind for us. I mean, these are, it can result in life and death scenarios. So it is war. I mean, it is us versus them, right? And I think so long as you're an MSP and doing the things you need to do, it's a big pie, right? There's room enough for all of us, so long as you're ethical, which, is another conversation, but it is a severe consequence. I mean, losing personal records, losing medical information, taking down emergency care services, taking down power. I mean, that is a life and death scenario. So I want to make sure that, that's what's at stake.
I was watching I don't know if George saw it, and I forgot what even channel it was on. They were talking about, cyber war replacing conventional war and nuclear war. And I'm going like, absolutely. I always wonder, what is the response of? So say pick, Russia attacks us, cyber war, and we're, if you go with the thing, we're not up to speed to fight that. Do we respond with conventional weapons?
They're saying yes. If you're following what's being said today, that is what they are saying. Like, let's make it. I'm not trying. So instead of rolling the tanks in to take over the nuclear power plant, to shut the power off, they can just hack it and shut it off. They never even rolled the tank, right? Like, this is the same outcome potentially. They rolled the tank now because they tried to hack the power plant. They couldn't get in, and then they showed up, and then they blew a hole in the side. I mean, like, this is what we're talking about. This is what's happening now. This is not theoretical.
Yeah.
And those are some folks, those are some heroes at that power plant. I mean, they've been there for 2, 3, 4 weeks now. No breaks, no change. I mean, that's,
look at the alternative, right? You have some guy with a gun saying, "Oh yeah, I'll take care of it. You can go now." And then, now the whole world has a problem.
Yep. I've wished for 2 things through this conflict. One, that I would have the fortitude that some of the folks have shown, that same fortitude, and And the second thing, that I never have to prove it, you know?
Yeah, I think we definitely, something to definitely be said that we're lucky where we're at, right? Because if you grew up and were born in another part of the world, you may not be in the same situation.
Just got luck. Just woke up this way, George. It's been pretty good for me.
Agreed. Well, Nathan, not too long from now, we'll be seeing the bus pull up outside.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, I keep looking for the
Yeah.
bus. I'll be here in a minute.
And they're going to help set up, and we really, honestly appreciate you again for a second time now. Loaning us your space and helping us kind of bring your area together. And hey, bring hopefully some of the stuff we talked about in this session, you'll be talking about in person with people around you.
Absolutely.
And Nathan, could you do me just one small favor? If he gets there early enough, find a tattoo shop and just put America's Team Tattoo on his. I'll send you the money for it. Right on his head would be good.
I'll see what I can do, Keith. Yeah,
just a big star over each ear. That would be perfect.
I'll see what I can do for you, Keith.
Thanks.
Oh boy. All right. Well, listen, part of this is networking. So if you Nathan here was willing to give us an hour of his time, hit him online, find him on LinkedIn, talk shop. Maybe he has something that he's figured out that you haven't. And it sounds like that's somebody that'd be willing to, give you some tips. I mean, it's not the castle mentality, like he said when we first started the call. Like, it is a community. There's plenty of business out there for everyone. I feel that now more than ever, that there's more business out there that aren't working with MSPs, that are. Some have never worked with an outside vendor or service provider. And, that's good. That's good, because people are now getting into a position where they realize we might need some help, and there are people out there that can help.
Absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. I mean, that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I first got into this business, it was, I didn't know how to reset a password in Active Directory, so that's where I came from. And it was through conversations with vendors and competitors, right, that put me in the position I'm in today. And I'm happy to pass on that same knowledge.
Awesome.
I just sent you an invite, and he's a smart guy. He has an MBA. He didn't mention that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So look at that. All right. Well, this session was recorded. You'll find it at mspinitiative.com under session shortly after we're done here. Follow the tour online. We got San Antonio today in Nathan's parking lot. We got Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas come right behind them Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So if you're in the area, we'd love to see you. Definitely raise your hand, throw us a heads up. So especially if you're an MSP, we can have you stop by. Otherwise, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you here. We do these Tuesdays, Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time, guys. Take it easy.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.